Good morning, good afternoon. Welcome to the Perfect Discovery Call. We're really excited to have you. Over 400 registrants for today's session. So we said, you know what, with a 30% conversion ratio, we're really excited if we got 100, 120. And it looks like a lot of you really want to talk about this. This is a hot topic. So welcome, welcome. Really excited to meet all of you and some of you a little bit later in the Q&A. If you are brand new to Samsales, you're probably thinking, she talks really quickly. That is on brand. I do. We're going to try and pack as much punch as we possibly can in today's session. So pay attention. You've got the recording coming to you later, just in case you missed something from this. I'm Sam, and I'm our CEO, and I run an all-women team of almost 20 people. We work on top of the funnel sales training, everything from social selling to emails to how to prospect effectively using great tech stack. Tons on LinkedIn, as I just mentioned. And we are also an agency that builds brands for executives, celebrities, and founders alike on LinkedIn, running their holistic strategy. But today we are going to talk about discovery calls. And before I take it away with the presentation, I'm going to pass it over to Paige, our lovely VP of Marketing, who's going to go over a few housekeeping details, and then we'll be off to the races.
Thank you. Hi, welcome everyone. If this is your first webinar with us, you can submit questions in the Q&A. We already have a long list of pre-submitted questions, a lot of questions to work through. If we have any time rapid fire at the end, we'll try to work you in as much as we can. We have a women's workshop coming up next month, April 17th. The wonderful Amy Volas is going to be a guest co-host for us. So you don't want to miss that. A wonderful supportive group of women. And then we have a chance to win an hour of free discovery call breakdown with Sam. We're hosting 3 free 1-hour sessions. You can invite your entire sales team, and we're going to select 3 winners. So I think that's it.
Thanks, Paige. Okay, so just a couple of things. If you haven't been with us before, just note that one of the perspectives that we have, that I have on discovery calls, is the idea that they should just be for discovery. So I think a mistake we often make, and this is a little different for super transactional sales, but if you were selling a little bit of a longer product, a complex product, if you're selling to mid-market to enterprise, that discovery call should just be a discovery call. And the mistake we make is often putting the demo and the discovery together. I tell you, you've got 20 to 30 minutes of an executive's time. So use this time that you have to discover everything you possibly can about them. There's that old adage that we should be talking 20% of the time and the client 80% or 70% of the time. And it's true. This call is really for us to understand about them, their challenges, what they want, why they want, etc. Use that time wisely. Even if you only need 18 minutes of that call to discover what you need to say, you're perfect for us and we're perfect for you. Let's go on to a demo. Don't cram that demo into 12 minutes of the remainder of the call. Maybe you show one thing, right? There's something really visually appealing that they wanted to see. Maybe you just say, can I just show you one thing? And you move on. But otherwise, save the discovery just for discovery. We're going to talk about a couple of things today. So quick agenda on what we're going to go through. This is a very express version of our 2-hour perfect discovery call training, but some things that you can walk away with to really hit on how to do calls differently. And I'll tell you, if you only change one thing that you guys do, make it the research that you do beforehand and the opening script. That's it. In fact, if you want to leave after that part of the presentation today, you can try that, report back. You're going to see it's going to make a massive difference to you. So we'll cover that. How do we book the call? Show me, you know me research on this, small talk first impressions, all this exciting stuff. And then we're going to go into question behind the question, closing the call, and some FAQs. If you're also new to us and you don't know what Show Me You Know Me is, you can probably figure out that it's pretty important because it's framed back here, as well as urgency. But it's really the art of doing research on our buyer before we show up to a call. Imagine, right, being prepared. We understand who the buyer is, how long they've been there, challenges their organization has. We show up as a different rep instead of showing up as someone that just looks like they're back-to-back, even if we are back-to-back. So let's get into it. First of all, just condensed slide rather. How do we book the first meeting? I think something that's super, super important is just even a very small way of how we get the meeting invite scheduled. So if you, let's say, send out an email, somebody responds to you and they say, we would love to meet with you, send over some times that work. First and foremost, or let's say they say 2 o'clock.
Sorry, can I pause you? I don't think people are seeing your screen.
Let me share. Thank you for raising your hand about that. I forgot.
Can everyone see it now?
Let's go back to the agenda. Okay, so agenda real quick on what we're going to run through. Thanks for the heads up, you guys. Critical thing to remember to share our screen. The things we're going to run through here. Second piece we're going to run through And now let's talk about this specifically of how we're going to book the call. So again, somebody writes us and they say, we want a meeting. We can meet Tuesday at 2, anytime after 3, etc. Before we even send the invite, just one quick thing that you can do to stand out is respond with gratitude. So just say, thank you so much. Thanks for the reply. We're excited to meet with you. You're going to see an invite come in just a second for 2 o'clock on Tuesday. Feel free to pass it to other members of your team that you think would find benefit in this or to want to hear what we have to offer before deciding if we're right for you. Simple things that you can do to reverse that process just to stand out and be different. What most reps do is they don't reply or they've sent a calendar invite already and then that's it. And the person's okay, we got what we needed. We're off to the races. So start with gratitude, send the calendar invite, and do something different here with the subject line. Put your company name first, prospect company name, and then the purpose of the call. I can't tell you how many calendar invites I have on my calendar that simply say, I don't know, Samsales plus this company name. And I'm like, what is this about again? And then there's no agenda in the invite and I have no idea what it is. And sometimes I just reschedule because I don't know what I'm here for. Simple things you can do to stand out and make sure to connect on LinkedIn. So great bonus move. Everybody wonders when is the right time to connect with the buyer on LinkedIn. Beforehand, after the meeting, make sure it's positive. Do it before. If this is part of your process, this also forces you to go to their LinkedIn profile and do your research. Who are they? How long have they worked there? Who else do they know? Have they worked for brands you've worked with before? What can you figure out about them? Which basically leads us to our pre-call checklist. Now, you're going to get this in the tearaway sheet afterwards that Paige is going to send to you, but doing your pre-call research is really critical. So this is a lot, and you might look at this and your eyes might have crossed already, or you've already left the room. But here's the thing that's really important. Even if you are back to back every single day, you need to make time for this, right? I make time. I am back to back every single day, all day. I make time for this. I want to show up in a different way to that call. And that's understanding a little bit about who the buyer is and the company that I'm targeting. So look at these 3 different sections and you'll see a lot of information here, but a couple things to call out. Sometimes we'll get on calls with our clients to help them figure out how to navigate Sales Navigator. And maybe the rep shows up, maybe not because LinkedIn's amazing, but let's say the rep shows up and says, Sam, how familiar are you with LinkedIn Sales Navigator? And I say, not at all. I did work there for quite some time and I'm brand ambassador for LinkedIn Sales Navigator, but go on and tell me. So if we do our research, right, if we look at the attendees first, if we figure out something about them, we're going to show up in a different way. So check your CRM and see, has this person shown up in your CRM before? Particularly if you work for a mid-market or larger company, you might find that the odds are that this person has purchased from you multiple times. To know about them, so who they are, right? Figuring out that information, who we have in common, where they've worked before, really important. And then their company, make sure you know what they do, what space they're in, what they do for a living, who their competitors are. The really beautiful part is a lot of this can be figured out, especially on the company side with ChatGPT in 3 seconds. Use AI to your advantage there to figure that out. And then don't do as I have done in the past, which is not know how to say the name of the company right. I know we have some people from McKesson on here, so you might appreciate that I mispronounced Teva Pharmaceuticals for a very long time as Teva Pharmaceuticals. So make sure you know the name of the company that you're talking to and how to pronounce them correctly so you don't pull a Sam for once. Let's also think just really quick about Zoom ambiance. And I just want to touch on this for 2 seconds because this makes a difference. One, what's your background? Is it blurred? Is your bed made? Things like that in the back. Make sure that we're showing up in a professional setting, but check your ambiance on your face as well. So a lot of reps will show up and they're like, Paige, hi, thanks for joining. Excited to talk to you. Paige is like, I can tell. And you're like, I know. So simple smile, enthusiasm. Somebody's agreed to take a meeting with us. Somebody's agreed to go on a first date with us. If we show up in our first dates like that, probably not going to go so well. And same for our discovery call. So just throw a smile on. Hi, great to see you. That's it. Call it a day. You don't have to be this over enthusiastic, agitated bird that I am. This small smile can go a long way to show that you're happy to be there, even if it's the 19th discovery call you've had that week. All right, small talk and first impressions. Something some of us are good at. Some of us are not great at for reading the room of when we should move on to the next point, but keep in mind how small talk does make a difference. So a couple of things in how we make that small talk happen. Again, condensed slide, but on the left-hand side, this is often what we hear. So number 1, where are you calling in from? It's right there on my LinkedIn profile. You tell me. I might say that sometimes if I'm feeling spicy, but otherwise do your research. You know where the person is calling in from. You can make a safe assumption that they're not traveling, or you can say, Looks like you're in a hotel. I guess you're not in DC today. Whereabouts are you? Connect the dots, show them you know them and that you've done your homework. We see this a lot too. So the junior person on the call joins, right? Imagine for Paige, she's the VP of marketing, right? And let's say she joins and somebody is like, Paige, great to see you. Just waiting for Sam to join. And then stares at her silently for the next 62 seconds. Can make a great impression on Paige. She's going to be super excited to advocate for you. So think about it. If the person is on the call, no matter their level, juniorness, seniorness, etc., there's a reason they're on the call. Engage with them, make small talk, understand who they are, what's their role in it, right? Don't just sit there in silence. It's really awkward. Imagine if you were live in person and you did that. You're in a conference room, Paige enters, nobody else is there, and you're just like, hey, and you stare at her. Oh boy. Make conversation. Use that time wisely. And finally, how's the weather? Don't talk about the weather. Utilize your executive presence. Now, we might have some Brits on the phone, and I realize in the UK, it is completely normal and lovely and expected to talk about the weather. That aside, be better than the weather. We have all this information, hopefully, that we've done our research on, that we can start the conversation on just to build rapport, have that small talk going, and make better use of our time there. The other thing to consider is, all right, we've done that for 90 seconds. We've made our small talk. Everybody's on the phone. Now what? And this was something that showed up in quite a bit in our Q&A in advance. It's how do I make that transition? How long do I spend on small talk? And then how do I make that transition into not so small talk? So what you want to be mindful of is controlling the call. This is your call to run. Even if this is an inbound lead, even if this was a referral, whatever it is, it's your call to run. And the buyer's expecting that. They're looking for you to keep things moving, right? And advancing along. So be mindful of how you make that transition. And even the 2 or 3 seconds of a delay between your show me, you know me and rapport building to when you move on to starting business chatter can make a difference. Here's what we hear a lot of the time. The rep will say something like, oh, that's a great joke. Okay. And then there's 2 or 3 seconds of silence. And the buyer's like literally leaning into the camera and being like, are we going to get started here? So the worst thing that can happen is the buyer says, okay, what should we talk about? And then you're like, oh God, and you get nervous. And then you talk about yourself for 28 minutes. So instead, just consider about how you make that transition, right? So let's say I'm talking to Paige and I would say something simple, great joke. I love, love, love those scenarios. Okay, so listen, really quick, right? I wrap up my sentence. I know it's on me to carry the conversation and then jump into the actual reason we're here, which is to do a discovery call and to learn about them. So how do we make that transition? Here's how we do it. When we go from the great joke, love to hear that. Okay, so here's what we typically hear on the left. My first of 19 questions is this. Whether you're a BDR, whether you're an individual contributor, whether you're a strategic enterprise rep, we tend to go right into it for our self-serving questions, and we don't want to do that. Or perhaps we've been taught that we need to figure out BANT, budget, authority, need, and timing as quickly as we can, or that we need to run through MedPick as quickly as we can on the discovery call. We don't need to hit them with the firing range of questions. We need to know, why'd you show up here? So avoid that first one. Second thing, and this is the one that we probably see the most often, is so interested you in taking this call. And the person says, I don't know, my team had great things to say about you. And then they stare at you. And then you're like, oh my God, what do I say? And you get nervous and you talk about yourself for 28 minutes. So let's avoid that. That's not really helpful to us. And even if they say, we're looking for a better platform to do this, we're struggling with prospecting and we are hoping to switch from this to another platform. When we get that answer, it focuses on features and benefits. And more often than not, it sets us up for failure because we hear one thing we love. You need help with prospecting? We can do that. And then we talk about ourselves. So avoid that one. And then the final one, there's a lot of banter out there about how we should show up to calls with a particular point of view. The buyer's here to learn from us. We should show up to the table. We should give them our point of view. We should start to educate them, etc. That's super cute and dandy. What if, let's just suggest that your point of view has absolutely nothing to do with why they showed up for the call? We have to understand more about them before we ever start talking about ourselves. So come with a point of view. Come with materials prepared, come with something to talk about, but temperature check first. So here's what we say, right? This, I'm sure some of you have screenshotted this. If not, feel free. But this is where I was saying, if you can only learn to do 2 things, that show me you know me element first, and then changing the script, your calls will be different. I promise you. It is really rare that you get on a call with Samsales and you don't hear us do this. So I could tell you a million things about Samsales. And then think about those 2 or 3 headlines that are specific to that buyer persona. I also want to stretch you to think about those 2 or 3 things that you can think about for that buyer persona to not just be the one thing they inbounded on, but what are the 2 or 3 things related to that you could talk about? Because what you'll often hear is when you say 2 or 3 things, someone says, "Oh, I came for one. I didn't realize you did 2 and 3. Oh, great. Now we can cross sell our buns off with you. That's fantastic." So think about those 2 or 3 things related to that buyer persona. So I could tell you a million things about us, 1, 2, 3. But I'd love to hear from you first. This is your POV. This is your research. This is what you're bringing to the table. I know you recently raised a ton of capital. I know that you're growing like crazy. I know I saw this in the press XYZ. That's positive, by the way. Focus on the positive. But, and then move to that section. Tell us about your team, challenges you're having, initiatives you're working on for the year ahead. Would love to hear about the overall landscape on your side, if that's okay. Would love to hear how I can make best use of your time today. This is as unsalesy and as different as it gets. It shows you've done your research, you're prepared to talk about things, you're happy to talk to them, but love to hear from you first. So you're doing 3 things in here. Here's what I can help you with, number 1. Here's what I know about you, number 2. But I'd love to hear about you first, if that's okay, asking for that permission. And real quick here, if you want to take a quick look at the script, like here's something very simple you can look at to screenshot here. This is something that we would say to a VP of sales. What happens when you ask a question like that? When you ask this question, more often than not, you get the most magical thing ever. You're going to get a deep sigh. Yeah, so even as you finish that bottom part of that script, you're going to see the person like shift in their seat, cross their arms, open up. They're going to take a breath. You probably won't even finish the sentence before they start babbling because they're going to be so excited to talk about everything that they have on their minds. But that deep sigh means that you're going to get a stream of consciousness to run for 2 or 3, 8 minutes. If you look at almost every discovery call Sam runs, that's it. Sam Sales runs, that's it. We do a report, ask this question, and then it goes on for a long time. So a couple key things here. Don't interrupt. Really rich talking coming from me who never struts up, but don't interrupt. Let them talk and let them get through everything. You're also probably going to find that they apologize at the end. Sorry, that went on forever. And you're like, oh, so magical. Thank you. That stream of consciousness will tell you exactly how to sell to them. The other thing to just note here is make sure that you engage. Like we talk about active listening quite a bit, and we'll talk about this a little bit later too, but make sure you engage with thoughtful nods during their speech. If they say something that you know is bad, right? So maybe somebody tells us our conversion rate for discovery calls from 1 to 2 is 30%. If we go instead of, they're not going to know if we know that's bad. So that little can do something great for trust building there. So make sure you're thinking about that. You're nodding, you're making those faces, et cetera. That's great active listening, all without interrupting them. The other note here is, what do we do after they stop talking? Here's a process to follow. A couple of things. In that opening script, after you get the stream of consciousness, perhaps you go back to the first question. Tell me a little bit about this giant pain point that you have. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that, or ask a specific question around that. But when they start to tell you what they want, you need to know why they want it. So when somebody says we need a new prospecting tool, we need better sequences, we need to build brands on LinkedIn, the thing that's so easy for us to do is say, we can help you with all that and talk to you forever. But we need to know why. If we don't know the why, we're not going to be able to actually sell the product effectively. We're just going to say, we can help you with that. Do you want to buy some? When we understand the why, we can dig in. Why is this important? Who else is it impacting, et cetera? We'll get a little bit more to that. But we want to understand that. The way we do that is by asking that initial question. Tell me more about pain point 1. Then they talk to us, they give us some feedback, and then we actively listen. What's active listening? It's the art of asking a question, hearing the response, and being able to ask a question based on that response. So I use this example all the time, but my husband comes home from work and I'm like, how was your day? And he says, busy. He gives me a riveting one-word answer, busy. And I'm like, the hell am I supposed to do with that? You're going to have your clients who also say good. And you're going to say, what do I do with that? You've got to figure out how to dig in, right? So if my next question is, cool, what do you want for dinner? That's my self-serving BANT level questions, right? It's my firing range of questions that benefit me. I don't really care about how his day was. I want to know what we're eating. So instead, you ask, how was your day? You hear busy. And then you say, what made it busy? Is there something happening at work? Are you guys going through layoffs, hiring, etc.? He works for the Department of Justice. You tell me why things are busy these days. So, why is the day busy, right? Is this particular time of year or something different happening? Talk to me about that. So, you got to dig in, right? That's active listening. You ask a question, you get an answer. The next question is based on that answer. Then, as they continue to talk to you about what it is that they're looking to achieve, what's going on there, this is where you can tie your value proposition, storytelling, and the so what of our product. So we say, you want to build brands on LinkedIn for your executives. Tell us a little bit about why. We're finding that things are different in terms of the way we're marketing. We are looking for things that drive more ROI. Great. Where are you spending your money right now? What's giving you not so great ROI or where you would shift this to? Here's what we're doing. Okay, got it. That's exactly one of the reasons why we created this line of business. Here's the value that we have. Let me tell you a story of someone that looks just like you that came on and started doing this. And here's why it matters. Here's the so what behind that. And then the final thing I want you guys to think about, we're going to dig a little deeper into all these things, is the question behind the question. When you get a question, I don't want you to answer it. I want you to think one level deeper. And we'll talk about that in just one moment. Couple of other things. Let's think about that so what that we just touched on for the value proposition. When you talk about the things that make you really wonderful in that discovery call, you have to think and ask yourself, so what? So if you say that our user interface is incredible, our integrations are superior, our analytics will help you streamline processes, so what? The so what of what it is that you do and the value that you bring is what makes a difference to your buyers. If you just say this is what we do, your competitors are saying the same thing. And it might seem obvious what the so what is, but you're the one who sells us every single day. So it's really important that you get to the heart of that so what so they can figure out what it is that you do differently, get them to think differently. This is where you get consultative and you really add value to them. That's storytelling, right? Let's think about one easy thing that we can connect the dots on here. Let's say we have a feature, benefit, and so what of an electric car. What's our feature? It's electric. Boogie, boogie, boogie. No, nobody? What's the benefit? You don't have to get gas. You don't have to fill gas up, right? You can do something positive for the environment. So what? So what then is tied to that specific buyer persona? So you have an electric car, but you don't need to get gas. So what? Imagine how much time you spend waiting in line for at the gas station. Imagine the days that you get in your garage and you are already running late for a bunch of things and that your gas tank is already on empty. You're never going to have to do that again because you can fill up, so to speak, every single night. Start to think about those so whats. If you guys have all seen the Airbnb commercials that have been airing for about a year, they're fantastic so whats. So they talk about what you typically get if you go to a hotel as parents, as girlfriends doing a trip, as people that are four people that are going off together. And then they say, here's what happens in a hotel. Here's what you can do differently in an Airbnb. And here's the so what of what matters. They've done a beautiful job with their marketing. It's a masterclass in exactly what we should be doing in the sales process. Now, two other things I want to tell you about is the question behind the question. And why I say to never answer that question, you should answer it, but in a little bit of a different way. So when we hear questions from our buyers where we get our happy ears on, we think that there's intent there, we get really excited. But what we need to think about is there's a reason they're asking. There's something behind that question, and it's our job and responsibility to get behind it. But on top of that, when we get behind what's the question behind the question, get so much more information out of them. Let me give you an easy example. I grew up when I moved to the States, I'm originally from Switzerland. I moved to the States. I moved to Orlando a few years after I moved to the States. And my very first job was at Disney's Typhoon Lagoon. For any Disney fans out there, it was such a blast. I got to ride water slides for a living. It was great. But in our training at Disney, we learned this thing on the very first or second day. And it's what Disney's most popular question is. Feel free to throw in the chat what you think it is. And our note is usually, where's the bathroom? Where's Mickey Mouse? Probably where's Elsa these days. But Disney's most popular question is, in fact, what time is the 3:00 parade? 92% of sales reps are going to say, it's at 3:00. Does that answer your question? It's at 3:00. Does that make sense? That makes sense. Thanks. What we really want to think about is what's the question behind the question, because it sure as hell isn't what time is the 3:00 parade. What is the most popular question that cruise ships get? What time is the midnight buffet? It's at midnight. Does that answer your question? So here's what I want you to think about instead when you get these questions. Why are they asking? And the way to answer is this: yes, no, maybe, it depends. It's at 3 o'clock, but tell me a little bit more about why you're asking. What we're taught at Disney is to look at the situation in front of us and see if we can figure out what they're really asking. So, is it a family? Is it a twosome? Is somebody in a wheelchair? Are they tall? Are they short? Do they have no kids and they want to avoid the parade because the lines are going to be shorter at Space Mountain? Although it's probably different these days with past, again, for any of you Disney nerds out there. But what you want to think about is what's the question they're asking and how can you really be of help to them? So, yes, no, maybe. And I have more to share about that with you, but can you tell me a little bit more about why you're asking? Here's what I want you to consider. Every single job that I've had, Samsales included, I've been asked a question of, do you have an app we can integrate with? Do you have an app we can use? So Samsales has a bunch of subscriptions on our website called Sam Shorts. Can we integrate those with an app? When I hear that question, I'm like, buying signal. People want to buy us. This is great. Let me answer the question. Let me talk about our app. We don't have an app for 13 minutes. What if the app doesn't matter? What if the app really matters? I need to get behind that to figure that out. So maybe I talk about it instead of asking and I find out it doesn't matter. Or maybe I find out that the incumbent doesn't have that, that it's costing them a ton of money, that their sales reps are really frustrated. I need to dig in. Yes or maybe. Tell me a little bit more about that. Why is an app important? Isn't it important? Do you need it in 3 years? Dig in. And the cool thing about this is that this is where all the information comes from the buyer. It's not about us in that discovery call, like I said, it's all about them. Now, closing the call, how do we move on to the next step? And this seems to be a place where we trip up a lot, right? Maybe we had a really fantastic call. Maybe it seems like they want a ton of things to do with us. And they're like, all right, this is great. And you're like, okay, what are the best next steps? And we ask this question and it's really awkward, right? And we sound just like every other sales rep that we've had, that they've had calls with. So instead, here's what I want you to consider. Your call is a win if you can get as much as you possibly can out of them. But then if you can figure out how to double the quantity or double the quality of who shows up to the next call. So if I'm talking to Paige as a VP of marketing, how do I get another VP that's her peer on the call? How do I get her VP or how do I get Sam on the call, right? How do I double the quantity, 2 VPs instead of 1, or double the quality, get an extra title to show up? When you do that, there's a very easy thing that you can do to ask that in a not so salesy answer. How do we immediately multi-thread and how do we do that in an effective way? Here's a script you can use. So if you do everything that I talked about in a very condensed way, if you do all of that, more often than not, you're not going to have to do anything to figure out your next step. Your buyer's going to be so jazzed and they're going to say, okay, here are the next steps. Here's what we should do. On the off chance that they're not, here's a script. And you're going to see a couple of things here that are bolded. Let's start here. Okay. So I know there's a few challenges we can solve for you. Why don't we do this? Let's find a time where I can give you a tour of our technology, give you some of the visuals of where this can help and how this can specifically apply to what you told me today. How's that sound? That sounds amazing. I'm on the edge of my seat. I can't wait. And you're like, that's what I thought you would say. Thank God. Perfect. I'll get an invite sent around. Who else do you think that would benefit from this on your side? Or who else do you think will want to see this before deciding if it's right for whatever the client's name is? Couple of notes here. Why don't we do this? I love this language because it makes it feel like that buyer is getting something special, something maybe they don't deserve. You go to a restaurant, you have a bad meal, manager comes over and he's like, why don't we do this? Let's take care of your bill. Why don't we invite you back next time? And you're like, okay, all right, that sounds great. Just a change in semantics really makes a difference there. Tour of our technology. Raise your hand if you get really excited when somebody says, I'm going to give you a demo walking you through 98 slides of a deck that I already showed 98 other people this week. No hands in there. Nobody. Tour of our technology. Oh, I got Paul. We got Paul raising his hand. Tour of our technology. I'm going to give you a tour. I'm going to show you around and what can specifically apply to what you shared with me today. I don't care if this is the same deck that you already gave to 98 people this week. Make sure that it's bespoke. Change it a little bit. Make sure it's specific to those challenges, right? And then you'll find that closing there. Who else would want to see this? Who else would benefit from this? Who else is having a challenge with exactly what you're talking about? This is you being buyer-centric. This isn't you saying, who is the economic buyer? And would they like to show up to our call? Because the person's going to say, no, I'm pretty much it. And you're going to be like, okay. And then you're off to not a great start, right? So who else would benefit? How can we help you? Who else is frustrated with this? Think of how to close it that way. When you close it out, there's a ton of different things you can do, and you're going to see that in the tear sheet that Paige sends over afterwards, just a few other hints of how to keep driving and nurturing the call. But I wanted to hit on a few FAQs that we typically go through in our discovery call training, and then I'm going to pass over to Paige for our real questions that came through. Number one, I noticed you didn't reconfirm the time that they had. I think this is so maddening. I even just posted about this, I think somewhere on LinkedIn this week, but people who get on the call and they're like, Paige, I just wanted to confirm, do you still have 30 minutes to chat today? And Paige is, yes. And you're like, okay, great. Wasted some time. If Paige had less than 30 minutes, she'd probably start the call off just by telling me. Otherwise, safe to assume this is a really dated practice that we can kick to the curb. I also didn't set an agenda with my buyers. So I think this is also really maddening on discovery calls. Think about if we did this on a first date. Paige, thanks for meeting me for drinks. What I'd like to do today is tell you a little bit about myself. Then I would like to hear about you. Then we'll have some questions back and forth. And if we agree that this was a good time, we'll go on a second date. How does that sound? And Paige is like, check, please. Or she makes an excuse to go to the bathroom and then she leaves me immediately. When we set an agenda, it really brings a formality to that beginning of that discovery call, which is meant to be more of a conversation. Set the agenda, but set it in your meeting invite in advance. This is what I'd like to cover. I'd like to hear about you, your challenges, etc. I'll be prepared to share some opinions, but I'd love to start the call about this particular thing. When you set that agenda in advance, you let them read. You also up the likelihood that they're going to show without having to reconfirm the meeting the day before. And they have a clear idea of exactly what you're going to go through without having to waste 98 seconds on that particular thing. We talked about the narrative and the insights and point of view at the beginning of the call, so you can skip that one. What if this is a call with a super senior member of an existing client? Should you follow that same script? No. So let's say you work with Wells Fargo. Let's say you've had Wells Fargo for 2 or 3 years. They've been a client, you've worked with multiple teams, et cetera. And now all of a sudden you're getting the opportunity to talk to their chief data analyst. If you show up to a call with the chief data analyst and say, tell me about your top concerns, she's going to say, take care, bye, and hang up. Those calls are meant to be where we do show up with a point of view. We're prepared. We're here to present and say, we have done an inordinate amount of research and working with your teams. We have a lot of experience. We know what some of your top challenges are. We'd love to present to you, to talk to you about what those are. And then we'd like to hear your feedback back on those things and how we can continue to further your goals. How does that sound? So it shifts because that 30 minutes with that super senior person on your team is meant to earn additional time, not to make them do all the homework that you should have already done. Second call with the same buyer, unexpected guest join. I'm going to skip this one, but I posted about this with a video that'll answer that question. And then we did map out their buying process on the discovery call. Imagine if you went on a first date. I'm again on my first date with Paige, and I say, Paige, second question I want to ask you is, what's your FICO score? How much money do you have in your bank account? What does your brokerage account look like? She's going to say, it's a pretty advanced conversation. We don't even know if we like each other. And I'll be like, I know, but I really want to know, what's the buying process like? You have to think about these things in stages and in phases. So if we ask these questions out of the gate, they're again self-serving, and we haven't even earned the right to ask those questions yet. So slow your roll a little. Discovery call is about them. It's not our self-serving questions. What are they looking to solve for? What are their challenges? Why does it matter? Who else is it impacting? Find that stuff out in the call. You'll have more information than you know what to do with. And the final thing I'll say here, and I'll stop our screen share for just a second. If you are uncomfortable doing these calls, if you are new to sales, if you haven't quite found your footing yet, the best thing I would tell you is just shift your brain to think about these calls as opportunities to solve a challenge, not to sell a product. So just say, goal for the call today is going to be, how can I help you? Not how can I get revenue out of you? And if you think in that way, you're going to ask naturally questions that will help you solve the deal, but you'll figure things out in a much better way. All right, we're moving on to Q&A, which you guys might have thought would never happen, but we are here finally. Hi, Pam.
Hi, Sam.
How are you?
I'm great. I'm still laughing over the, hey, Paige, what's your FICO score?
She still won't tell me. No doubt it's above an 800.
Definitely, no doubt.
She's not getting a second date. That's
She's not getting a second date.
Went to the bathroom already. She's out of there.
What's your question, Pam?
I love this topic about active listening. I think I've been engaging with you over this on LinkedIn as well. I feel like it's just a new set of sellers who maybe haven't had that opportunity to really hone in on that skill. And I'm wondering what your suggestions are for helping get better at active listening. Are there any kind of techniques or tips that you have to help our teams be better at it?
Yes, great question. So I think a few things. I think one realization for a lot of leaders is the idea that the way that we communicate is very generational. So one thing to know is if you have on the lower end of millennials or your Gen Zs, the way that they communicate is different than, let's say, our boomers or our upper end of the millennials might communicate. And what I mean by that is asking questions isn't as commonplace for that first group that I mentioned. So exchanging information happens by talking at each other. This is what I did this weekend. This is what I had for lunch. This is where I'm going on a trip this summer versus asking questions. So from a leadership perspective, sometimes we're like, you need to ask better questions or ask open-ended questions. And those people are like, and they're like, yeah, but I don't do that in my personal life. So I don't even know how the hell to do it in my work life. So it's key that this is a skill that might seem commonplace to us, but isn't to a lot of other people that are joining the workforce. So that's one thing. We used to do this really cool exercise when I was a leader. And basically, what we would do is we'd have our teams or broader teams in the room. And basically, every person around the room would ask a question. And then the next person would have to answer it. And the next person would have to ask a question based on that answer. We had 3 or 4 like voids or skips that could go around. So if someone felt uncomfortable and they're like, I don't want to do it, they force the next person to do it. So it can skip around and keep things fun and also just build camaraderie. But just a good way, especially to just have some fun, teach those skills, have people that would say busy, like the answer that I gave earlier, and screw over their pal next to them, which is really fun sometimes. But I would say think about how you can practice that in your team meetings too. It's a great skill to learn. I think it's also just fantastic from a personal perspective. So, what a benefit to your relationships, your friendships, whoever your partner is, your spouse, your significant other can really make an impact. But show that curiosity.
Love that. Yeah, that's so important. I agree with you. And I love the role play and the going back and forth and really putting it in practice. So yeah, that's super helpful. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah. Thanks, Pam. Great to see you.
Same.
Okay, bye. Hi, Sam.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good, Sam. How are you?
Hey, listen, I'm a bit of a Samsales junkie, but my question was, as I registered for this, inevitably, I'm in complex sales. These are service sales, they're long cycles, they're big deals. Inevitably, at some point, you run across a decision maker, an influencer who is bound and determined to give you zero feedback during the discovery call. So my question is, how do you have a great sense of humor? I appreciate your sense of humor. We've gone back and forth, but somebody that has none, how do you deal with that?
Yeah. So, how to crack that person that doesn't seem to be very excited to talk to us or willing to open up? I think first it comes down to that first question, right? And to building that trust with the person. So let's set up a scenario. You get on a call and you're like, hey, like I would love to hear about your challenges, your initiatives, what you have it going on for the year ahead. And they're like, yeah, happy to tell you about that. But one, what do you know about us? And then that's all they say. So if we don't have that show me you know me, by the way, our deal, our opportunity is going to be dead on arrival. Or two, they might say, yeah, I don't really want to waste my time on that. I just want to see a demo. And you're like, okay. So I think it's important that we flex to the personality that we have on the call. And when you have someone that's like that, usually it's because they're a little bit jaded. They've had really bad discovery calls in advance. They know what it's like to deal with a rep. They're senior and tenured and they haven't had great experiences. So it's our opportunity to say, I'm a little bit different. So you might say, happy to give you a demo. I'm going to fire some things up on my side. While I do that, what would be beneficial for you to see? It could talk to you for 90 minutes. We only have 30 today. So what are you challenged with? What are you hoping to see differently? You just have to go about getting those answers that you want in a different way. If that person is still super tough to crack, or let's say they show up and you're like, what would you like to see happen differently? What would be good if you had instead of what you have now? And they're like, yeah, no, things are pretty good. And you're like, I think it's also totally okay to call the elephant out in the room. The mindset you have to remember is there's a reason they showed up to the call. I don't think there's a single one of us that probably isn't mostly back to back every day. And especially if it's an influencer, a decision maker, a buyer, they're sure as hell not carving time out for something if they don't have a reason for it. So I would say, sounds like things are great. And maybe there's some advice or some perspective we could offer for you. But I guess I'm curious, like, why did you take the call today? Why did you carve time out for us? If things are as frankly as wonderful as they sound, come at it from an empathetic perspective and just be like, why the hell did you show up here today? Instead, and cut to the heart of it. It's totally okay to do that.
Yeah, no, it's great stuff. And it got the wheels turning. And one of the questions I ask at the end, if it is that rough, is what aren't you hearing that you wanted to hear today that you're not hearing from us? So,
Yeah.
but yeah, no, it's good stuff. Thank you.
Yeah. And feel free to rely on that line too. Like, how it sounds like things are great. How can I make good use of your time today? What is it that I can do? As you ask this question, Sam, like I have a flashback to, I think maybe 2009 when I was on a call like that. And the team said exactly that. Our webinar platform's great. We just thought we'd see what else is out there. And I'm like, where the hell do I go with this? It's really challenging. So that was advice I got from my old CEO back in the day. And
Great. Love it.
still
Thank
miss her.
you.
Thanks, Sam. Good to hear from you.
Good to see you.
All right, Paige, I think we have one more live, yeah?
Actually, no, he is not going to ask that question anymore, but we have a lot of rapid fire questions to run through.
Let's hear it.
Yeah. Okay. First up, how do I ask when the decision maker will be joining future calls without making the participant feel insignificant?
Great question. So I think that multi-threading is key. Best way that you do that is at the end of that closing, like we said, right? Double the quantity, double the quality. Number one is just saying, who else would benefit from this? Who else has this challenge? Peers on other teams and other divisions that are going through the same thing. We'd obviously love to do as much work with you as possible. Are there other people that you think would find value in our solution? If that person's like, not right now, I'm really investigating things. I'm the sole decision maker, especially if you hear that, red flag, red flag. I run a nearly 20-person company. I do not make decisions in a vacuum. So those other people don't either. And most organizations don't work that way. Also, just quick note, don't make the mistake of thinking that just because you have the senior stakeholder, you have the CEO, you have the CRO, whatever, that's enough. That person is still going to rely on other people. So we do need to multi-thread. If you need to play your cards a little bit delicately with this personality and say, no worries, let's get a demo set up, just know that it might be a red flag to you that you haven't built enough trust, that they don't feel comfortable enough just yet of putting you in front of their leadership. It might take you multi-threading on your side to be able to get that person to come in. And so you might say, I'd love to continue the conversation, give you a broader demo. Why don't we do this? Why don't I ask my boss, who I think can give you a great perspective as well, to join? Would your leadership or your leadership team or your decision-making team also want to join us? I try to avoid decision-making team, but finesse that language to say, I'm going to bring my people. You want to bring your people? And then final thing I would say is be prescriptive. So as you work the deal, if you're still just talking to the influencers, the key stakeholders, but not the decision makers, not the budget holders, you need to get to them. So you can say, typically at this point, this is what we start to get involved with. So we might talk to your IT team to do InfoSec. We might talk to procurement to do XYZ. Typically, we want to talk to your implementation team because there's some plugins and integrations that need to be set up. How can we go about getting those meetings going? So it's not, when will you bring them? It's just like, how do we do that? That's obviously the next step. So what should we do to get that cooking? And that answer will give you some information about where your deal is too. It's a good temperature check if they're game for it or not so much.
Okay, great. Next question. Would love to hear how you approach an exec saying, I just want to see the demo on today's call, even when you send a detailed agenda.
So I think same thing. You have to give them a little bit of what they want, right? If you think about a couple of different places where we're taught to not give the buyer what they want, it's maddening and frustrating. So we have to earn the right to ask those questions or to do what it is that we really want to do in the sales process. A quick just note on that. We hear a lot of, hey, can you give us a sense of what your pricing is? And the rep pushes back and says, I can't give you pricing. We're not at that stage yet, things like that. It's all like process that we're controlling on our side because of how we think the sales process should go versus giving you logic around that. So if I'm asked something, let's say around pricing on that note, just real quick, and I don't know what to give you because I don't actually know what you want, rely on logic for that. Give them something. You can say our typical engagements start at $25K. Some of them go to $500K. It really depends what you want, but baseline, you can expect to spend this. On the demo piece, give them something, right? On the pricing piece, give them something so that you can then work the rest of your standard process. So happy to give you a demo. Let me fire a few things up. what would be a good use of your time? Is there one specific thing that you'd like to see? I can demo this, like I said a little bit before, I can demo this for 90 minutes, but what pockets can I show you that would be most helpful? And then maybe they start talking while you're firing things up on your end. And then you never show them the demo because they talk so much and you're able to actively listen and dig in. But I think when you resist giving at least a little something to what that buyer wants, you're just setting yourself up for not success, for disaster. So give them a little something, give them a taste, give them a visual, show them something, give them a price point, and go from there. I'm going to say just one more thing on the pricing piece, because I think that was a question we had in our Q&A as well. If they do ask about price on that first call, right? How should I answer the question? Even if I know very clearly what the price is. When I was at LinkedIn, one of the platform that I sold was LinkedIn Sales Navigator. And at the time, licenses were about $1,600 a piece. One of the calls I got on with my rep at the time, the client asked and said, we have 100 people that we want to buy licenses for. How much is that going to cost? And the rep said $160,000. A little bit less because there were some economies of scale there, but effectively that's it. And the deal ended up getting lost, right? This is a call recording that I listened to. But the deal ended up getting lost because the buyer was like, we don't have 160 grand. Thanks. Take care. We have minimums, right? We have those thresholds that we know. So if you happen to sell that product right now, you can sell no less than 10 seats. So you sell 10 seats, maybe that's $1,600, so it's $16,000. So the answer that I would give instead is it's going to be a monstrous amount for 100 people, but I want to just start about where the baseline of where we are. Minimum seat threshold is 10 seats, $1,600 a license, but that's your worst case scenario. So the more individuals you add on, the more licenses you add on, the longer you sign for, the faster you sign for, whatever those levers may be, it can really make impact to price there. But worst case, you need to buy at least 10 seats, spend $16,000 in order to participate with us. Getting a buyer to see that and say, actually, like we have 50K to spend on this. So what does a pilot look like? Can we buy 50 licenses for 2 years? What does that discount look like? What can we do? Can we get some extra training involved if we sign faster? Don't say it's just going to be this final price. Start at the baseline and then give them levers where they can continue to discount and they can spend more. Cool. Thanks, Paige.
Next question. Do you ever find prospects are hesitant to answer certain questions during discovery? Which ones and how do you handle that?
I think they're always hesitant to answer around budget. And I personally think budget is a weird question to ask. There's probably some differing points of view on this, but here's mine. If we've qualified the buyer and the company and the size, our ICP, et cetera, if it's right for us, we can probably safely assume that they have some kind of budget for us. If we can also look at the characteristics of that company and what else they buy. Are they buying softwares that look like us? Are they buying solutions and services and consultants that look like us? Are they the right size? Do they know what they're probably going to spend on us? If all those things matter, I really don't like to ask the question of budget, because what is budget? Number one, budget is always tied to value, right? We may not have budget, but if there's a need and there's something important that we need for it, we're going to find budget. I want you to think about every single company that didn't, quote unquote, have budget for Zoom in January of 2020. And then every company on the planet had budget for Zoom in March of 2020, in April, in June, July. If you are a former Zoom rep in 2020, we would all like to loan a loan from you. Thank you very much. Holy cannoli, right? So it's tied to that. The other thing is, if you have somebody that comes on, say it's somebody that's purchased, it's like their third Ferrari that they purchased from you, and they're coming onto the lot, you're not going to say, what's your budget? You're going to say, what are you looking for? What do you need? What's a challenge? What do you want? They're not going to say I have $250,000, because you can probably, if they have 250, they have 278, they have 301, right? Think about that. So I don't like to ask about budget. And I will also tell you, for those of you who are like, yeah, that's cute, but I need to figure out BANT as part of my qualifications for a call. The only thing that really matters to me is need. So the end of BANT is what matters. Do they have a need? What is it that they want and why? You can find access to authority. You can move timing and create urgency. You can find budget if there's value there. So if I was going to focus on anything on that call, it'd be the end of BANT.
Question. How do you teach reps the skill of formulating questions on the spot?
This is one thing I wanted to note earlier to Pam's question about active listening. So Part of what holds us back from active listening is we are panicked that we are not going to know what to say next to an answer or what to ask next to a particular answer they give. That is a-okay, by the way. So if you are honest and transparent and say, this was a really useful answer, I don't quite know what to do with it. I want to talk to our team. There's so much value here in what you just said. Can I get back to you on this? Can I switch topics, but get back to you on this? Your buyers are just going to appreciate your honesty first and foremost. So how do we teach those questions to ask? It's through discovery call coaching. So take the thing that you guys are getting from us, the form to fill out for 3 of those calls, have us come on, listen to your calls and help you think of better questions to ask. But if you as leaders, right, if you take some of those calls, take your best reps, right, listen to those calls together as a team, to me, there is no better training on how to ask the questions. And even just as proof points of when you ask something, what comes next. We prioritize this at Samsales. We have 2 sellers on our team, Mallory and Sarah, and we do this. In fact, this week, yesterday, we listened to a discovery call that we had, the CRO of a multi-thousand person company. And we listened, it was a call that I led, and we listened to how the questions I asked shaped the answers. So listen to that. See how we ask this question and it gets 9 minutes of talk track. See how we then ask this and it gets this. I'll also say just a quick note there for leaders. This is a great outcome of our call coaching yesterday. I asked a question on that call, and Sarah, our rep, was like, do you really care about the answer that you just asked there? Does that answer help us if she had only answered the question you asked? And I said, no. But she gave us a ton more information while answering that question. So maybe by asking something like, what's the organizational structure of your sales team? Tell us about that. That's probably not going to impact how we sell training, but a whole mess of stuff is going to come out as part of that answer that's going to help us sell. So we've been teaching those questions, right? How to ask open-ended questions is great. Do that through call coaching. Utilize your sales call recording tools, your gong recording tools. Use those like they're going out of style and coach to that. Cool. I know we're at time. I'm going to say 2 things. I'm going to stay on a little bit longer for anyone that can, 10 more minutes or so, and answer a few more questions. Thank you so much for joining us. 2, if this was helpful to you, share us with your people. Post about us on LinkedIn, tag us in, share our newsletter with people. Paige puts so much effort into it. So definitely make sure you do that. And just come and join us next time. Hopefully this was of value to you. So really appreciate you guys joining, so many of you, and staying on for so long. All right, Paige, let's get through a few more questions and then we'll rock and roll on Friday.
Okay, here's one that came in through the Q&A. How about when we're on a discovery trying to poach customers from our competitors? What's the elegant way to provide value and showcase worth, all while making the decision to poach millions?
Throw them under the bus. Just kidding. Just kidding. Couple of notes. 1, talk about the competition as furiously as you can. People hesitate to talk about the competition. They wait till the very end. They wait and see if anybody's even going to bring up the competition before they say anything. And I say, do the complete opposite. Most of the advice that you're going to get from myself and from Samsales is going to be do the opposite of what you have probably done in the past or have been taught. So talk about it first and foremost. If that person is on the call with you, there's a reason they're on the call with you. Even if it's just a tiny thing, even if they're momentarily pissed about something that happened with their existing vendor or whatever it is, there's a reason they showed up. So utilize that to your advantage, right? And say, you have a great product, right? We love XYZ. We love, people talk to us all the time. We use value selling. We use force management. We use challenger sale. Love. Those are fantastic. We fit in a bit of a different way. Tell us about that experience so far. What could have been different? What was adoption like? We'd love to just hear your feedback on how it was when you worked with them. Be quiet. Let them talk for 2 or 3 or 9 minutes. So then I like to pop in from there, right? And talk about what it is that we do differently. So they might say, this was really helpful, but it was more theoretical. We could say, great, that's what makes us different. Or say, I love this about them. Now consider if you could do this instead, or consider if you had this added bonus, or consider if you could take this data and then make some more informed decisions on it, right? This is how we're a little different. It's not better. We're not talking about how we're better. We're not throwing them under the bus. We're just saying, this is all the really cool stuff that you can do. You're doing some of it now, but you can do this differently. I'm going to give you just one different example there real quick. So I posted about this a couple of days ago, I think. when I sold On24, so webinar application, webinar platform, right? And you can go on, I'm sure many of you guys have been on On24 webinars. Some of you might be at On24 and on this webinar. Hello, good to see you. When we sold that platform, we had this thing that was a survey widget, right? So perhaps our client comes over and they say, we do surveys right now and we don't get a lot of responses. That's what makes us different. That's one of the really cool things about our platform. So survey widget, you're not getting responses because you're sending your survey post webinar. In ours, it's the timing that matters. Between the 45 minutes of presentation and the 15 minutes of Q&A, pop your survey widget open. We're the only platform that lets you do that. And then think about what you could do with the data afterwards. You can do this, you can ask these questions, you can shape your webinar strategy, you can get more information of your buyers so you can follow up, you can make them MQLs, blah, 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 blah. Instead of saying, yeah, that sucks over there, and that's why you're not getting this, here's what we do. Make it a really positive thing. It's awesome that you do surveys. Here's how we can help you get responses, right? And turn that into a win. And then also when you talk about the competition early, it shows your competency in your space. So make sure you know your competitors, not only what they do, but why, very positively, you crush them.
Love it. Little competitive here.
Yeah.
Okay, what changes in a second and third discovery call when the client is adding optional teammates, especially with power/decision makers, and how do you do introductions there?
Cool. So this is probably akin to the link that Monique shared with you with the video that I did, but I'll dig into this a little bit deeper. I think it's really important that you remember these calls aren't about us. At some point they are, and we're using our time. We want to make sure we demo, we get through our stuff. But if you get on a second call, so again, let's say I get on the page, we have a great first call, and I'm like, let's bring Sam on to the next call. And she's like, not yet. Want to talk more about this? I want to understand this XYZ. So we have a second discovery call and learning, storytelling, tying the dots together, hopefully earning her trust to then get in front of double the quantity or double the quality. That third call, let's say she says, I'm going to invite a few people from my team. I'll just forward their invite. Let's say they're on Outlook and I don't see it in Gmail, or she creates a separate invite. I don't see who's joining. And I'm like, who's joining? And then I ask her and she doesn't answer me. Thanks for nothing, Paige. But that happens all the time. So you get to the call and you're caught off guard and you don't know who to expect. And you're just like, I hope it's really good people. When those people join, they have something to say and something to share. They have a different point of view, a unique point of view. They have more information to share than I probably already got out of Paige. So it's really key, even if I think I'm meeting with Paige for that second call and new people show up to the second call without warning, I'm going to direct it back to her first. So I'm going to say, hi, everybody, build my rapport, do all that stuff, etc. And then when Paige comes in, I'm going to say, okay, so let's get started. I know we wanted to cover a couple of things, this and this about our platform, but Paige, maybe I can pass it to you first. Quick round of introductions. Monique, Susan, I would love to hear from you guys, like what's important to you, what you'd like to get out of this call, what would make this call a good use of your time today. So maybe we can start there. Paige, if I pass it to you, you're going to see that I also do a couple of things, and this has taken a long time to master this craft, but when I ask my questions, I sometimes ask the question and ask it a second time in a nonsensical way. And that's just my EQ trying to give Paige, who I'm putting on the spot, a second to get her head together and her thoughts together. You're also going to hear the way that I do pauses. So I say something like, but maybe I can just pass the mic to you. Paige, is that okay? Little pauses there just to have her be like, oh, wait, what? And then I always try to say the person's name first, because think about if I'm ranting, and then okay, I'm going to pass it to you, Paige. And Paige wasn't paying attention. And she's like, shit, what? And I'm like, yeah. And then she looks bad in front of her peers and then hates me. So use the name first. Paige, maybe I can pass it to you to get us started. Would that be okay? See the shape? Sure, Paige, sure. So think about small little things that you can do there, but we want to know what they have to say. I don't care if the entire call gets derailed and the only thing that we do is have more discovery with those people. Discovery is never done. So it's not done on your third call. It's not done on your 19th call. It's not done when you've had a client for 10 years. That discovery is always persistent. Keep this in mind for anyone that's on the phone for land and expand. This is really important as well. So we'll close a client. It gets transferred over to us as the account management or CSM team, RM team. And then we're like, cool, we get to know them a little bit. And then what do we do? At month 10 and a half, we're like, hello, here's your renewal paperwork. Thanks. That sounds insane. It is the standard. And it is what I've seen so many times. Discovery is never done. What's changed with them? Are they growing? Are they expanding? Are they changing rules? What's happening? Do they need different licenses? How's adoption? That show me you know me and that discovery and nurturing should be happening throughout the length of the relationship. Even if you're only doing it, let's say on a quarterly basis with like little prompts for yourself to check in with that team, send them something, add value, invite them to a webinar. That should be happening. That's the difference, right? Like it's a steady flow for the RM that can really get that deal done versus the hello, it's been 10 months since we've spoken. Would you like to renew? And that client's no. Also, Paige and I are talking about a platform that we have at Samsales that we spend a lot of money on. Our renewal is in November, and I've been talking about now whether or not we should renew or we should change to another platform, which I think would make Paige jump off of a building. So we'll probably renew. It's our CRM. Who said that? Okay. So thinking about that those renewal conversations happen a very long time in advance because we want time to vet other vendors, look at other platforms, negotiate, do all of that. We're not doing it if we're smart in October of that year. Don't panic, Paige.
Multiple things are making me panic. Okay, next step. What do you do when you bring on a naysayer? Example, we don't have budget, we have other priorities. So when one person is a naysayer in the group, how do you manage those dynamics?
Oh man, those are the best. Naysayers and skeptics, those are the ones you want to win over. Challenge extended. So really important that you figure out when you work with your initial partner and the champions that you have, the decision makers that you have internally. You might have those decision makers who need buy-in or approval from another team. Let's say you're tech and you want to sell something to sales enablement and they need IT's approval and IT says, nope. We have other priorities right now, and yours is going to fall ninth in the queue. It's just not important. This is also where your multi-threading up the chain is important. Is it important to sales enablement or is it important to your CRO? Is it important to sales enablement or is it important to your CMO? How do we get those massive stakeholders, those executive level stakeholders to say, yeah, it is ninth in the queue based on what you've heard from us, but we actually need to make this third in the queue because of this. So it's really critical that one, you work with that original team, and then two, you understand the true challenges from the naysayers. So this isn't a priority for us. We have budget for other things, et cetera, right? To understand what are those other priorities? What do you have budget allocated for? What would happen? What's the cost of an action if you guys deprioritize this and you do this in another 12 months, you prioritize everything else. But the key for you is really going to be working first with that team. When you also get additional people to come in, try to understand their personalities. So they might say, we're going to bring in our IT team, right? Who needs to evaluate this? Say, what's it like working with that IT team? Can we expect anything from them? Do you expect pushback? Are they into this? Do they have capacity for it, et cetera? Because if you just say that's okay and show up, you might be caught off guard, right? You might also need to multi-thread internally and bring in a really good solutions engineer that can say, implementation is not as hard as you think. Here are 2 or 3 things you can do. And here are some testimonials from our clients to show just how easy it was. It's not me just being salesy. I'm going to leave it at that, just interest of time. Thanks you guys for hanging out. Hopefully it was good and helpful as a session today, especially the extra 10 minutes of Q&A. Really appreciate you all. And say hello on LinkedIn, sign up for our newsletter, come to our next event, and hope to see you guys again soon.